Hello. Today, I'm going to do a tier list of the events from Empires based on Thunder Dominion rankings. So, interestingly, when we ran this poll for the Empires events, we also included the promo card Summon. And I'm not going to be including Summon on this list. If I get to the promo cards at some point, I will try to include Summon there. But yeah, for now, I'm just going to be looking at the Empires events, strictly the ones from Empires. So let's get a move on. We're gonna start off with Ritual. Fun fact: Ritual is the only Dominion card that I named during playtesting. Fun stuff, and of course it had to be like one of the worst events. Yeah. So what Ritual does is for 4 coins, you could trash a card from your hand, then gain a curse, and get victory points based on the cost of the card that was trashed. Uh, uh, Importantly, I got that backwards. You actually have to gain the curse in order to get the points. So, yeah, this card is just kind of bad. You generally have to trash cards that are good in order to get points from it, and then you're stuck with a curse, which maybe you can deal with, maybe not. But it's also just kind of slow because you have to get the points after you've gotten the expensive card and then roll to another turn and then manage to, I don't know, like draw the card and then trash it and then get rid of the curse. I don't know. It's a whole lot of work for not a whole lot of points in most cases. There are definitely kingdoms where the points that you get from this make a difference. One unfortunate thing about the ritual is that the point pile is pretty limited compared to other VP chip cards. Especially if there's a cursor in the kingdom, you're probably never going to get much out of ritual. So I think like you could probably safely ignore ritual in most kingdoms that it's in. It's just it tends to be ill-fitting. But there is the occasional one where there's like a big expensive card you can get like Animal Fair or something that you can then ritual. But yeah, like often getting a lot of victory cards is not really how you win the game anyway. And so this card just tends to be a little bit too slow and pointless. Our next card is going to be Annex, which you can't see the whole art here, but it's actually like a rather epic piece of art considering how not great this event is. So yeah, the Annex event costs 8 debt, and what it does is gain you a duchy, and then oh my god, I always have to reread it. I always have to read it because I never buy the thing. Here, let's just go over to it. Why don't we? Yeah, spoilers. Okay. Yeah, Annex, you look through your discard pile, you shuffle all but up to 5 cards from it into your deck, and you gain a duchy. So you take 5 bad cards out of your discard pile, which is not like a horrible effect or anything. Okay, so Annex, the thing about this is it costs 8 debt. It costs 8 debt for a duchy. You're only ever buying this pretty much on the last turn of the game, or if you're in some kind of game where there's a mirror and you're slogging and you have to get that duchy. It's just a necessity. Because yeah, 8 is just so much to pay for a duchy. Sure, it's debt, but yeah, like usually you're just not going to want to do that. And the shuffling cards into the deck effect, I mean, I guess it's pretty cool, but it tends to not be that relevant in most games. So this just ends up being weak. It's something you'll get occasionally when I guess it's necessary, but like in most games, you're just going to completely ignore the thing. I can only count. I mean, I can only recall like a few times I've ever gotten Annex and won the game. So, in fact, I don't even know if I've ever won it with Annex. I would have to look at the stats. I think it's overall pretty weak. There's probably no problem with it saying it's one of the worst events in this set. All right, our next event, let's just move right on, is Tax. Um, I'm a little bit I'm not completely clear on where to put this one. So yeah, tax is interesting because it makes the game start with 1 debt on every kingdom pile in the game, including like the basic treasures and stuff. And of course, if you played with tax, you know that this could be like a little annoying, and it can create some weird like first couple of turns shenanigans that go on. Um, but yeah, I'm not really so much evaluating what that does to the game than I am thinking about what buying tax does. So for 2 coins, you essentially add 2 debt to a pile. You make it like more annoying for somebody to buy something. And this kind of has the same problem Embargo had back in Seaside Edition 1, where usually if there's something that you're taxing, it's something that you would want to buy as well, and so you're not really happy about having to put tax tokens on it or debt tokens. Um, yeah, and that's really tax's problem. Often you're just kind of buying it because you have two and hoping that it pays off. At least that's the situation I run into. If someone gets ahead, I guess the dream is that you tax a pile that they're using to win the game with and hope it sets them back a lot. But usually, if you're in that situation, the two debt is not going to be enough to dig you out of the situation you're in. And like the more I think about it, the more it's got to be like a D tier event. Like I really can't say very much nice about it. I think like this card is kind of pointless a lot of the time. You're getting it just because I really just don't think it's particularly good. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there in D tier, and let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this ranking I'm thinking might be showing its age a little. 2022 was the last Thunder Dominion. Maybe we ought to get some more ranking going in there. It's Banquet. Uh, for the moment, I'm going to put it in B tier. I think it's like a lot better than those other events, but maybe I'm overhyping it. Yeah, you gain 2 coppers and you get a card costing up to 5. It has to be non-victory. Yeah, this of course used to be terrible, but I don't know these days with like all the power draw we have and like all just the completely crazy cards we has have as a plunder. I feel like adding a couple of coppers to your deck usually isn't as big a deal as it used to be. And like I don't know, there are plenty of times when I've just gone ahead and gotten the banquet to get a good card. Um, maybe it's like a difficult to come up with any situations off the top of my head, but I think it's fair to say this card is better than it was on the release of this set, especially if you have cards that can mitigate copper gaining in the first place. I think it's really like no problem. I mean, obviously it junks up your deck a good bit, but I don't know. Like if you're drawing a lot of cards, drawing coppers sometimes isn't the worst thing. So yeah, I think like this card is all right. It's either B or C tier, but I'm leaning more toward B these days. Let's maybe look at the rest of the list and think about it. So yeah, next on the list is Wedding, which I'm a little conflicted to put in B tier, but I guess I will. I will. So Wedding, if I'm not mistaken, it costs 4 and it gives you 3 debt afterwards, and it lets you gain a gold and get 1 victory point. So it's very comparable to Harem. The main difference is that you're able to buy gold at 4, if for whatever reason you only have 4. So yeah, you could open with gold, for instance, and get that point. The point from Wedding is often like pretty insignificant. It's only 1 point, and it doesn't really make up for, I guess, being in debt for a little bit there, in my opinion. Like I think the real reason you're getting this is just because you need that gold at a low cost for whatever reason. And you'll often see like players, I guess, who are newer to the game just go crazy for Wedding because it seems so good to get gold for 4, and like it's not terrible or anything. I mean, it's definitely better than just buying gold most of the time. Uh, but yeah, I also don't think it's like particularly impressive. I'd say it's maybe about as good as gold most of the time, which is to say like kind of average. So yeah, wedding. I feel like it's fairly mediocre. There's not too much to say about it. I guess like one thing of note is say you have like 8 coin and 2 buys, potentially, or even like 7 coin and 2 buys. You could buy 2 weddings, right? Because you buy one for 4, pay off the debt, and then get another. I might be incorrect. I might be incorrect. Um, yeah. Anyway, I'm not thinking about it too hard. You usually aren't thinking too hard when you get a wedding, right? Yeah, just like in real life. Um, okay. Yeah, I think this card's all right. I personally do not think it's better than Banquet. I would switch these around, but I'm going with what the group rated them, and we'll see how things turn out in the next tier Thunder Dominion list, not tier list. Okay, our next one on the list here is going to be Conquest, which I think is a solid B. So yeah, Conquest costs 6. You gain 2 silvers, and then you get what is it? A victory point. Let's just look at the card. You get like a victory point for each silver you gain this turn, right? So the first one you get just gives you 2 points because you got the 2 silvers. But if you gain a bunch of other silvers from Conquest or from other silver gainers, you could potentially stand to gain a lot of points. So the important thing to note here is that Conquest is an alternate victory condition, right? Because you can generate quite a lot of points with this potentially. Especially if you have like a big silver gainer that you then combo into Conquest, but also just if you have a lot of money for whatever reason, like giant engine turn with like 40 coins, then you just get a ton of conquests. Yeah, you can build up this, you can get this deck that like gets a whole bunch of silver instead of victory cards and also gets a lot of points and then can just kind of slog away to the victory with those silvers. Yeah, Conquest is pretty good in that condition, but I don't know. I find usually you can end a game without having to go for conquest in that scenario. It's pretty decent in, I guess, games that are running a little slower. Maybe you're not drawing your whole deck because, yeah, getting a little bit of extra money in those games is all right, like in money games, for instance, and getting some points with them, not the worst thing in the world. It's probably better than Harem, which costs the same at 6 and also gives 2 points. Yeah, this one gives you 2 silvers, which you probably want in the conditions where you would buy Harem. So this ends up being all right. I think like there are not that many games where you're going to go for it as a strategy, but they are on the table when Conquest is in play. So yeah, it's something to be considering. All right, our next card is Windfall. Yeah, the art is like horribly cut off on Windfall. I don't know about this one. I would probably put it lower, but Windfall, essentially, you pay 5 coins, and if there's nothing in your deck or discard, I believe it's like deck or discard. Let me check that. I almost never get Windfall, so yeah, if they're both empty, you get 3 golds. So I guess like you could compare this to say like Treasure Map or what is that thing, camel train, right? Like, I mean, this is a way like you can get a bunch of golds at once after your deck is already moving. So yeah, like once you're clean and you're drawing your whole deck, you pay 5 and you get 3 golds. Now you have an economy. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward in that regard. Like, that's not a bad effect or anything like that. You're usually just going to get it one time, probably, in that scenario. Um, yeah, I mean, it's okay for adding some economy to your deck. I guess like the main thing I would have to say about it is that there's a lot of competition for adding economy to one's deck, generally speaking. So it might not be the best one. Like you might also want to be adding cards that draw and give money, for instance, or do other effects and also give money. So yeah, Windfall ends up looking a little bit sad compared to them. But yeah, like if this is the best option on the board for filling up your economy after thinning down, then yeah, Windfall is something you would totally go for. And it's all right. In those games, it's going to be pretty good. In other games where, I don't know, maybe you're not drawing your whole deck or you don't want to add 3 golds to your deck, yeah, then Windfall looks pretty sad. But yeah, I think it just averages out to being all right. So yeah, B tier, fair enough. I don't think it has as big an impact on the game as uh, this one and this one, though, personally. All right. Our next card to think about here is going to be Salt the Earth, which I'm just going to put in the A tier. Salt the Earth is an in-game accelerator, maybe the biggest in-game accelerator, one of them for sure. At just 4 coins, you trash a victory card from the supply and get 1 point. So essentially, like instead of taking lots of points, you're lowering the province pile. Or I don't know, you could stall out late game and just like trash it to state without adding a victory card to your deck. Salt the Earth is at its best when you're using it against someone who is not suspecting it. Yeah, basically, if they're not accounting for Salt the Earth, like, you could easily win with it. But it's also pretty easy to see coming and prepare accordingly. Still, it has a rather big impact on the game. Like when Salt is in play, it means that people are going to be able to end the game with less money and fewer buys. So it's something you always have to be taking into account if you're playing at a high level. Um, Also, there's a notable combo here with Baths. Salt the Earth plus Baths like generates a lot of points pretty quickly. So something to be thinking about, like whenever you see those two on the board together. But yeah, like generally speaking, it's mostly used as kind of a province pressure tool, but it could be used in other scenarios as well, just like to trash a victory card out of the supply. Even like I don't know, like well, Theodom's out of the game now, right? So yeah, I guess I don't even have to talk about that. But yeah, like there are some like alternate victory cards that you might want to trash from the supply, although it's pretty infrequent. I think the most notable thing about this card is just the ability to end the game with it, and that's certainly quite powerful. But yeah, like one thing I would say with Salt the Earth is you really do need to be mindful that you're not lowering the victory pile at a disadvantage. And like that is something that just takes some experience playing the game to recognize like you're ahead enough that it's okay to mill provinces. Um, yeah, not too much to say about it other than that. I mean, like to show you what I'm talking about, I'd have to like go into an example game or something, which I'm not going to do right now. But yes, suffice to say, very important card when it's in the board, but maybe not the best all of the time. Okay, Delve is going to be our next card. Pretty straightforward A tier card. Gives you your buyback, only costs 2, and you gain a silver. So silver for 2. Um, like it's one of the best silver flooders if for whatever reason you're doing a silver flood strategy. But I'd say that's not the most notable thing about it. The most notable thing about it is that you can gain silver plus another card. Like if you hit 7, you can get an important 5 cost card and a silver with it, right? Like that's what Delve is actually good for. I mean, there are games with things like Palace where you do want extra silvers, and yeah, Delve comes in handy there. But yeah, the most important thing is just the ability to get silver plus another thing that you want. And I mean, if you hit 2, yeah, Delve is nice, right? You can get some silver for 2, and not the worst deal in the world there. Um, yeah, like so, I'll just always be thinking about it. I guess in a game with Delve, like, do I need the card at the price point that I'm hitting, or is it okay if I just like gain a silver and a lower cost card that will also do something I want? Because often, like, it's a nice way to improve your economy while making your deck better. So, yeah, Delve is pretty decent. Our next card is going to be Advance. Yeah, Advance, another A tier card, I believe. It costs 0. You trash a card from your hand and then gain an action card, I believe, costing up to 6. Let's check on that. Make sure I'm correct. Yes, you gain an action card costing up to 6. So the weakness of this card is that you have to have an action in your hand to trash. With that said, there are some actions that you're readily willing to trash, like Necropolis, Ruins, I don't know, Horses are a pretty good target for this. Yeah, there are a whole bunch. You could also open with, say, like a Trasher, and then after a few turns, you trash it to advance and get something better. The other thing to keep in mind with advance, and it's something like I'm bad at recognizing a lot myself, is that if you have a lot of buys for whatever reason, say you have a stack of markets, advance suddenly becomes a way that you can just gain a whole lot of actions in your turn at very little cost. Okay, like it might seem kind of scary to trash a bunch of action cards to get cards, but I don't know. That could be a way that you could pile out the game, but you could also be trashing action cards into better action cards. So it's a very flexible card. Only it costs 0. It just costs you a buy. So if you have a lot of buys and a lot of actions in hands, advance becomes pretty strong and something that you should carefully consider doing. So I think it's definitely A tier just because it's so flexible and it can be so important early in the game for getting up to high cost action cards. It can also be relevant in game. So yeah, it's relevant through a lot of the game periods. So yeah, Advanced certainly belongs, I think, in the A tier. Maybe not like the most amazing A tier, but it's definitely really good. Our next card is going to be, yeah, there are 3 left. Only 3. Yeah. Dominate. Yeah, because the rest of these, if you don't know, are not events. They're just the other cards from Empires. The next card is Dominate. Dominate, of course, seems like an S tier just because it looks so amazing. But let's look at it. 14 cost. 14 cost, it gives you a province and 9 victory points with it, which, you doing your math there, that's 15 points for only 14 coin. That's a lot of points. However, it's also just a lot of points. Like, it's not giving you anything else. It's just giving you a whole lot of points. Now, to be fair, it's for 1 victory card added to your deck. 1 stop card, you're getting 15 points total. And that's pretty darn good. So, like, it's certainly nothing to sneeze at. However, the cost is something that is significant. 14 coin, you're not going to get that in every kingdom. Or maybe, like, the better thing to say is you're not going to easily get that in every kingdom. Like there's a lot of times like this card takes a lot to set up, and you could potentially just run provinces the normal way, or run out piles before dominate really gets cooking. But if it does get cooking, it's very hard to compete with the amount of points that dominate gives. So I guess one word of advice I would have if you're playing with dominate, um, is, once people start provincing or dominating, as it were, you should consider whether you actually need to dominate or you need to lower the province pile by getting multiple provinces the standard way. Often, like, it's going to be better to actually just empty provinces. Like, you'll be able to get enough points to win. Because remember, it's not about getting tons of points, it's about winning the game with more points than the opponent. So, yeah, I really like that about Dominate, actually. I like that it's kind of, you got to go all in and pay that big cost to get the big points, and then sometimes getting less points is better. That's a really interesting thing about this card. But yeah, it's for sure powerful. It's for sure powerful. It just maybe like doesn't have as big an impact on the game as the two that are above it. And those last two cards are of course Triumph and Donate. So Triumph is like almost for sure an S tier card. Okay, it's not like amazing on every single kingdom. Let's look at it because a lot of people I guess just don't like see it coming sometimes. It only costs 5 debt. We'll get back to that. You gain an estate, so there have to be estates in the pile. And if you did, you get a point per card that you've gained this turn. So if you're only gaining one card, obviously this is not spectacular. All you're going to get is one extra point for gaining the estate. But if you are gaining a lot of cards, and there are so many cards that gain you lots of cards, or so many strategies that gain you lots of cards. I mean, just as a perfect example, gaining horses. Yeah, every horse you gained, you're gonna get an extra point from Triumph there. So, yeah, this card, like in some kingdoms, might as well say like plus 6 or more points, which makes this like better than Province in those cases. Yeah, like now obviously you don't go for Triumph right out the gate. You need to build up a deck that can actually gain enough cards for to make a difference. If you're like threatening piling out the game though, that probably means you're gaining a lot of cards, which means you can end turns with Triumph to get some points while you're doing that, and just kind of have some insurance points going into the end of the game. The other thing that you should definitely keep in mind is you can get more than one Triumph in a turn, right? If I gain 8 cards in my turn, then I Triumph twice, I get 9 points from the first Triumph, and then I get 10 points from the next one. 19 points. That's better than 3 provinces for 10 debt total. And a word about that debt. This costs 5 debt. That means it costs 0 coins, which means you can buy a Triumph as long as you're not in debt. You can buy Triumph with 0 coin. So yeah, like that's something like I guess a lot of people just don't see. You don't even have to factor in the cost uh, if you're at the end of the turn anyway, right? Like yeah, like if you only have 3 coins left, so what? End your turn buying Triumph, and yeah, you have some debt going into next turn, but you could probably deal with it. So yeah, 5 debt is kind of a steal for what this does in the boards where it is really, really good. Let's go back to our list here. I could probably say more, and people who are smarter than me could say more about this card. But needless to say, the reason it's up here is it gets you a lot of points. It can generate way more points than Dominate can, and for a much lower cost. It's just much, much more efficient. So, I mean, you could start triumphing at mid game and gaining that estate. And if you have a way to trash the estate, and you probably do in most kingdoms, it's not even that big a deal adding like the junk card to your deck, right? So, yeah, Triumph overall is just really, really good. You should always be thinking about using Triumph there. Okay, which brings us to our final card. And yeah, we're gonna add a row above, and we're gonna name it donate, because yeah, there's really no question. Um, okay, maybe there's more of a question these days, but I think it's pretty safe to say donate's the best thing in the game. Like yeah, there are some cards that are really, really powerful and have warped the game quite a bit. But I don't. I mean, I think like if donate is there, you're getting donate. You're getting donate. Like skipping donate is basically conceding the game. And I think like there's maybe no other card in Dominion I could say that about. Even cards that you buy almost 100% of the time, there was probably some way you could get around getting them. But donate, I mean, like there's just no way that you're skipping it. All right. 8 VP. So remember what I said about Triumph. You could buy this at 0, of course. Uh, yeah, okay. 8, sorry, not 8 VP, 8 debt tokens. That's all you have to take to get donate. At the start of your next turn, you put your deck and discard pile into your hand. Trash any number of cards, shuffle the rest into your deck, and draw 5 cards. So that wording has changed since the original release of Donate, but Donate is still like just as good. Yeah, the only real difference is you're not doing stuff between turns or at the end of the turn. You're doing it at the start of your next turn. So yeah, like you can't safely trash your curses at the end of the game with Donate. But that's okay, because everything else Donate does is really, really good. So the big question here, if you're a novice to Dominion watching this video, which I'm going to guess most people aren't, but if you are, you might be wondering, like, when do I buy this? And the answer to when do I buy Donate is, like, as soon as you possibly can. And by that, I mean, like, probably turn 2 or turn 3 is the ideal time to buy Donate. Sometime between turns 1 and 5. And if you're not getting Donate uh, during one of those first 5 turns, you probably lost the game. You can also get it later in the game to remove bad cards from your deck. Um, so one thing about Donate to keep in mind is, if you've learned how to trash well with Chapel, right? You're probably thinking like, gotta trash everything with Donate. Trash all of the junk starting cards with Donate to put my deck in super fuel mode, right? But yeah, the thing Donate makes you realize about the game is it's important to not trash everything sometimes. You have to have enough left in your deck to actually do things. So there's actually like a whole lot of strategy that goes into planning how you're going to donate. And this is actually one of the reasons I personally put this on the dislike list on Dominion Online, because I like personally just like don't like wrapping my head around it every game. Okay, but yeah, like you might want to hang on to 3 or 4 coppers at the start of the game. Just trash the rest of your junk. Really, a card like Chapel like can barely even compare to Donate, because like you don't even have to gain a bad trashing card to your deck, right? That you don't want in your hand all the time. You could just like get this event and then not have anything to worry about in your hands the rest of the game. You just have to pay off some debt. But you set it up so you have enough coppers to pay off the debt, and then the next turn buy something good. So, okay, I mean, I could sit here endlessly listing strategies that go with Donate, but just like as an example, Donate big money is a good strategy. Yeah, like it's not the best strategy when Donate's in the kingdom, but at baseline, it's a very good strategy. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like this is always good. If you skip it, like you're probably losing. I mean, obviously, someone could probably cite the one time they skipped Donate and won, whatever. But yeah, Donate is just that good. If it's on the board, I think even Donald X has said this, like, you're thinking about how to use Donate, and that's just kind of how the card was designed, I guess. Like, there was no question of whether you're going to get it or not. It's just win. Yeah, and that to me makes it like the best card shape thing in the game. So I'm probably going to leave it at that. These are the Dominion of Empires events. I was actually kind of surprised, like, there weren't more powerful ones, given that Empires is a pretty powerful set. But yeah, this is where I'm going to leave it. I will see you for the next tier list.